Healthy, healthy, Fennec Fox. Leaning on the Lord and anchored to the rock. Gotta stay strong, gotta stay smart. It's the end of the world, so do your part. Healthy, healthy, Fennec Fox. We're shining bright and thinking outside the box. Gotta stay lean, gotta stay quick. Those Templar cyborgs are pretty slick. Healthy, healthy, Fennec Fox. It's the end of the world, so do your part. Gotta stay strong, gotta stay smart. Healthy, healthy, Fennec Fox.
Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to the Dance of Life podcast, and I'm your host, Tudor Alexander. I hope you enjoyed that catchy little intro. It was a lot of fun to put together. You know, believe it or not, my podcast, in the description of the show, ever since I launched it and started it on YouTube, which was in 2022, has a bit about health and helping you get healthier and being healthier in your day-to-day life, helping you and your family get healthier and so on. So that's part of the mission statement of this podcast, but I haven't really done as much as I would want to do with it. Before I came to Jesus in 2021, I started my podcast in 2018, at the January of 2018, I believe. Yeah, January of 2018. And for several years, I was very active in health. I was interviewing lots of professionals. I was making various content pieces on health and how to be healthy and so on. So it was a very big part of my life. But I didn't do that with YouTube so much in the last several years, whatever it's been now. Today's 2025. So 3-4 years, something like that. And the reason was because there's a lot of censorship on YouTube. There's a lot of censorship with the whole COVID thing going on and jib jabs and everything else. And I didn't want to deal with that, especially having a new channel that I was trying to get an important message out of discernment. I didn't want that stuff to kind of backfire on me. So that was one of the reasons. And another reason was obviously that I just had a lot of very pressing issues to complete, like the End Time series, like the various major series that were produced in the last several years. So I didn't really address this topic, and it's a very important topic to me, but nevertheless, now there's more time because health is very important. And it's also been, like I said, for me personally, a very big part of my life in the last 20 years. I'm 40 years old today, and the last half of my life has been very involved in health on a very deep level. So today I want to act on that promise that's in the podcast description and share with you some very important information that will hopefully edify you and edify your family in the months and years to come. I also want to introduce a lot of things, or maybe reintroduce them if you are already familiar with them, but just basically share some things with you that are very new and edifying, hopefully. So 5 years ago, approximately around 2020, 2019, I was writing my big book, my big health and personal growth and everything else book. That book was called Dance Your Way Through Life. And it was about 800 pages. It was 8.5 by 11, huge book, never doing that ever again. And lo and behold, God had me write a devotional that was 650 pages or something like that this year. So you gotta admit that God has a sense of humor. After that book, I said, I'm never ever doing a book like this again, never. And then earlier this year, I did a devotional that's 650 pages. So isn't that funny? But anyway, I definitely don't want to do that again because it was a lot of work. But nevertheless, it was my landmark book on health and all things personal growth. The experience that put that together was probably about $100,000 or more spent on, wellness topics, research, supplements, coaching, seminars, all the things that I've done over the last however many years, personal investigation, everything else, and a lot of time, countless hours of researching, obviously being a professional athlete and training others, training myself to be, top performing, intensity performing sport, that kind of thing. And all of that went into that book. The title for me was about being adaptable. It was about being able to deal with whatever life hands you, right? Dance your way through life. Dance your way through the music. Because as an experienced professional dancer that I was competing, professional competitions and going around the country and doing all sorts of these types of things, you never could predict what was going to happen. It was always a very chaotic situation because ballroom dancing is very subjective. It's a subjective. There's no finish line in ballroom dancing. Of course, it's very political, and it's very rigged in that sense. That was one of the reasons why I realized it was just a scam. But nevertheless, the sport itself, itself is very subjective. There's no finish line. So you can't predict where you're going to land on the floor. You can't predict who's close to you, what moves they're going to do. You can't predict what music is going to play, whether you're going to feel it or not. And so it's constant uncertainty that you have to dance with. And that physical experience that I did for many, many years with both students and with myself professionally gave me an outlook on life about learning to be adaptable. And of course, God used that for the good and used all of the things I learned to eventually help me read the Bible better and, to all the things that I'm doing now. So anyway, the point is that book was a big part of my life, but it was also a big part of my old life too. There was a lot of personal growth, new agey stuff in there because it was a comprehensive book. I wanted to be like the book, right? I wanted to have health. I wanted to have personal growth, spirituality, mindset, everything in there. And there were a lot of things that needed to be undone. Obviously, the personal growth and new agey stuff needs to get taken out. It also has a lot of profanity in it, which I'm trying to remove from all my content. I've done that successfully. I re-edited my Don't Let the Devil Boil Your Frog. So if you got the one with the profanity in it, keep it. It's a souvenir item. It's not going to have profanity anymore. But this book had a lot of profanity in it. So that's something I thought was like, ooh, I'm really authentic if I have, a lot of swearing. But the reality is that that's not necessarily the case. So I had to redo it. But I never had time to redo it because it's such a monster amount of content that I just never had time to sit down and redo it. When I began my podcast on YouTube, the Christian stuff that I do today, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't. So what I did was the best that I could. I adapted some of the health information into health articles on my website. I tweaked a little bit of the content. I created a health section on the website on Substack that would link to all the health articles so that you could have kind of like an index. I uploaded some of the audio recordings that I did on these articles a while ago to the article so you could listen to some of them. I made one video on why it's important to supplement, and that's, as the time of this recording, it's also available in the YouTube playlist, the health and wellness playlist that I just created. So that'll be a collection of all the things there as well, at least some of them, because the audio recordings I didn't post to YouTube, but they're on the health page. I also uploaded my Body Hacker Masterclass, which I recorded in, I think, 2019 or 2020, which was part of this whole Dance Your Way Through Life program. And I made that for members that you can have a lecture on all kinds of different health topics there. And I also tried to share my health articles regularly on social media, on various posts that I make, just as a way to give you an option to edify yourself with health information. But that was it. That was all that I could do. And I always felt that I could do more with what I had. I used to do health coaching. I used to do coaching one-on-one with people, but health coaching takes a lot of time, and I just haven't had time to devote to coaching. And believe it or not, I love working with people one-on-one. I really do. But with all the things that I've done, it's gotten to the point where I don't have the time anymore. I answer questions as much as I can. I call people. I talk to them on the phone. I still enjoy doing one-on-one stuff with people and helping people through things. But coaching has been a real challenge for me to implement because of all the things that I'm doing. And I don't see myself really getting into that anytime soon. Maybe some group things, maybe once this library is finished, which will be at the time of the publishing of this video pretty soon. So if you're watching from the future, the library is probably done. So make sure you check it out. But nevertheless, we'll see what happens. We'll see where God guides. As of the time of this recording, I still have a few things that I need to wrap up. So my mind is not on coaching, but I used to do that. And I do believe in what I do and the things that I'm going to share with you today, the things that I've shared in my book and my articles. And everyone obviously is different, and health is an adventure for everybody in a different way. But nevertheless, I think that there are principles, and if you can be educated on those principles and have as many resources as possible to edify you, especially nowadays with like AI and different tools that you have to organize information, I think it's easier than ever to get healthy and to stay healthy. Of course, we also live in a very toxic world, which we'll talk about as well. But nevertheless, I wanted to announce some of these new and significant changes, including this particular series that we're doing right now on health, which will be free for everybody. Now, I think this is a very important topic, and hopefully it's going to educate you and edify you on how to walk the narrow road on this topic. Because like with everything, there is a narrow road to walk. On one side, we live in a very toxic world, in a very satanic world that is just built on death. And left and right, there's always a problem that is attacking your health, poisoning your body and killing you. We're also at the end of the Genesis curse, meaning that our genetic systems are the most frail that they've ever been, which is true. You look at, people in Abraham's time or even before that, they were living to 200 years old. Now, if you make it to 80, you're considered pretty lucky and fortunate. So we're also at the end. We're also at the end of history. And Jesus' return, as I've said in many other videos, if you haven't been tuned into those, then make sure you check them out. But I believe that we are in the generation of the Lord's return. When exactly it's going to happen, I don't know. I give it 7 to 10 years. I don't see the world going past late 2030s. I really don't. I could be wrong. Certainly people have been wrong in the past, but I think that the evidence of the witnesses that we have that all point to the same truth is too great to ignore. So what that means is that health takes on a different character. To get it? If the world is ending in 10 years, then what does that mean for our pursuit of health? Should we abandon it altogether? Should we obsess about certain things like aging or, whatever, longevity? Or is there a narrow road somewhere in between where we can walk in the narrow road between these two extremes and ideologies? So that's what we're going to explore today. This very important topic. And I'm going to give you my thoughts. I'm going to give you my experience. I'm going to give you some strategies, some helpful tips, as well as point you to in-depth resources like articles that I've written and other things that are now available. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and share with your friends that want to be healthy. It's good to be healthy like a Fennec fox, just like that little jingle. Some of the resources on the health page, the new health page that has been created, are paid resources. Not all of them. A lot of them are actually free resources. But just in case, if you want to be a member of the website, it's only $5 a month or $50 a year, which is even less per month. It's like $4 something per month. You do not have to be a paid member to enjoy the health resources offered. This is a free series. A lot of stuff on the new health page, which I'll show you in just a second, is mostly free. Some of the stuff is for paid members, but if you want the full shebang, it's only $5 a month or less. So what's new? What is new? What is being added? Well, my book, Dance Your Way Through Life, is revamped and released. Just like the gratitude map, when I wrote that, but that was the first book I wrote in 2019. And I tweaked it. I got the profanities out. I updated it with some new information. Actually, I added about, I think like 20,000 words to that book. So it's a brand new book, basically. Very much more God-centered, which it wasn't God-centered before. So I'm very happy with that. And it's a whole new program, and it's got a poster and everything. Everything that I wanted to do with that program initially is now what has been done with it. So I'm very grateful to God for that. But just like with that, this book is going to have QR codes on the pages so that when you flip through the book, it'll be a big book again. It's going to be 8.5 by 11. Nice and thick book with all kinds of info on it. But it'll have QR codes for the articles so that you can scan it. You can go to the article on the website so that you can click on the links that you need, whether they're Amazon links or links to the health store for the products that may interest you, if that's the case. So either way, or some of them will have, like articles that you can listen to. And I believe if you are on Substack, whether I recorded a voiceover or not, you can have it narrate the article to you. I believe Substack has that feature. I haven't actually used it myself, to be honest, but I know that it has that feature. So anyway, that'll be a way for you to interact with the content so you can get it in your brain without having to read it if you want. Or again, like I said, if you have products you want to pick and add to your health routine, that you can do it that way. The health option, so look for the book in the bookstore. The health option on the website now leads to a real page, not just an archive of health articles. So this page is going to host a ton of stuff. It's going to host this series. It's going to host, various podcasts that I've done, audio or video on health. It's going to host everything that I've done, like linking the articles to browse, linking to the Body Hacker series, a direct link to key articles like the 7 pillars of optimal health, how to heal your gut, how to heal your thyroid, all the things I'll show you in just a second. And it's going to have other useful information too, like how to get blood tests, where to get them, and so on. It's a free resource. And again, some of these things are paid things. So this is what it looks like if you go on the website, Health and Wellness. And again, if you're listening to this, you can just go to the website, danceoflife.com, just click on the menu. There's a menu there and it says health. Just click on health. So it's got the series, Healthy Like a Fox. It's got Dance Your Way Through Life. At the time of this recording, this thing is not uploaded. Some of these things are not uploaded. So, but when you will see this video, when it's published, probably it's going to be uploaded. Either way, it's got the book. It's got website health articles where you can click in. It's like, for example, if we click this, you can see it, search the health archive. So you can search anything you want, any topic. And eventually what I want to do is create some sort of AI clone that will be trained on all of my material. So it's more accurate of a glossary type of situation. We'll see. I mean, these things are changing super fast. Maybe Substack will even have such a situation. But either way, it'd be nice to have a glossary on everything that I've ever made so you can look it up easier. So there's a directory to the health articles. There's also linked articles that are kind of like, check these out first, sort of like the basics, like the pillars of optimal health, which is how to create a complete nutrition program with vitamins and minerals and where to get them, high quality, that kind of thing. How to plan your meals, how to heal your gut, oral care basics, how to recover from adrenal fatigue, how to heal your thyroid, how to hack fasting, sleep, how to build your functional medicine team with basically resources on functional medicine directories and things like that. So a lot of stuff on here. There's also this ultimate recovery stack, which we'll come back to later in this presentation so you understand what it is. This is the Body Hacker Basics Masterclass. This is that course. It's for members, but kind of like this. It's the same thing. It goes over, like a lot of health topics and in-depth and things like that based on my book. These are recorded health articles or basically recorded health articles and podcasts. So this is the video that I made, the only one on YouTube, which is 9 reasons why you should supplement, which we'll talk about a little bit as well here. This is a very important video, so you understand why you need to supplement in this day and age. But you have to do it correctly, which is also important. These are the recorded health articles. So normally if you try to access a health article, it's a paid resource, okay? And these are the voiceovers for these various articles that I recorded. It's not all of them, but it's some of them. I think it's like 20-something voiceovers. I posted these voiceovers on this free page so you can listen to them for free without having to be a paid member to access the articles. So there's quite a lot on here. As you can see, that there's just a lot of articles. Now, there's also health podcasts that I did from 2019 to 2021. Obviously, these are before my Christian YouTube channel. I don't think there's any profanity in here, but anyway, just kind of a heads up. But these are really good evergreen interviews that I did on a lot of topics, like health and healing with my friend Noel. He's an osteopath doctor. A lot of doctors here. Oral Wellness, Will Revac of Oral Wellness, have a lot of his products in the health store. A lot of great blogs on oral health, like holistic oral health. I interviewed a lot of experts, people Charles Hockala, who was on the Iodine Project with Guy Abraham and Dr. Brownstein, if you know who those people are. Guy Abraham is dead, but Charles Hockala has his own lab, and he's the one that I get the boron from and sell it in the store. But there's a lot of great podcasts here. Kurush Madahi, he has a lot of stuff on dentistry and basically how to maintain a good mouth without having to, deal with all these things that we deal with fluoride and everything else. So a lot of great articles here, or podcasts. And again, these are older things, but I think they're still valuable, so I posted on them for free. This is also a health testing guide. So a health testing guide is what? This is basically a list of tests that you need to consider on a regular basis, like vitamin D, CRP, homocysteine, ferritin, your blood pressure, your CBC, your complete blood count, ESR, or erythrocyte sedimentation rate. All these things are inflammatory markers and things that help you understand the inflammation state in your body. Your thyroid panels, what to look for, what are ideal results, what do they look like from a holistic perspective. Some other tests that are important to get. And these are not every test under the sun. There's a lot of tests to get, but these are regular tests that I get in order to maintain just a general picture of my overall health. Most of these tests, like I think, like blood pressure, complete blood count, these are like the ones that your doctors go for. They don't care for ferritin or homocysteine or CRP. And these are absolutely vital to understand the picture that's going on in your body. So I talk about these quite a bit. I'd also talk about them in the book. There's, I think, an article on health testing. So all of this is free. This is just on there. It's free. If you go to the articles, it's a paid thing. There's also, of course, the health store, which is not yet linked on this page, but again, by the time you see this video, it probably will. The health store is going to be an addition to the Dance of Life podcast merch store. It's just a separate section in there, just like women, men, unisex. So you can see health. Health and wellness is going to be a place where I'm going to offer products that I've used for many years, that I've known about, that I'm familiar with the research, that I've vetted. They're very high quality, very low risk, very high reward. And they focus on recovery, maximizing your gut health, and reducing inflammation. So these are the three things: gut health, inflammation, and recovery. These are the three main kind of pillars to attack, I think, in terms of your supplement routine. And of course, there's a lot to talk about that, and we will talk about that today. But nevertheless, the health store is going to be basically a way for me to offer those products to you. I'm going to have a little more work for myself because I'm manually fulfilling these things, but it won't be too bad. Hopefully these high quality products will help you get better, get healthier, help you and your family. And of course, along with the information that comes with those products, like the health articles, the book, and things to help you edify and to understand what you're doing and how you're using it, I think it'll be a very valuable resource. Also, there's also going to be bundles available. So just like with everything else, if you buy X amount of products, that you're going to get up to 10% off, just as kind of my gift to you and to help you with that. So I hope all of these resources are going to be valuable to you. I hope they're going to be edifying and, of course, to help you have a sound mind and body. My goal with all of this is to help you, number one, not be dependent on prescription drugs or the broken medical system that we have, because the institutional model is going to be the first to go along with the beast. So if you're dependent on big pharma, if you're dependent on these medical systems, that's just another liability. Of course, we can't control those things, but nevertheless, from our perspective, we do the best we can. Number two, to help you have mental and physical health so that you are in full power as much as possible and helping your own circle and being a leader and participating in God's plan for your life by being creative, by being energetic, by being out there and doing something with the information you're learning. That requires physical energy, mental energy. And of course, something to be said about that is if you're not taking care of your body, you don't have enough energy to do those things. So it's very important in terms of our purpose in sharing God's plan, I believe. Hope also, number three, is to help you manage your inflammation, help you have better recovery, help you manage your gut, because these three, again, are the main drivers of disease. If your gut health is poor, if you have high inflammation, if you're not recovering well, then that's just a recipe for disease in general. And last but not least, to help you get educated on the foundations and the basics of health. Health is very complex, obviously, and it's a different story for everybody, but my goal is to give you the principles and the basics so that you can exercise good judgment and create a plan and a strategy for yourself and for the people around you. So this is my perspective today. This is my perspective on health today in light of the eschatological landscape that we're facing with the return of Jesus, with everything going on, and of course, at the same time, with the toxicity of the world around us. And I want to share with you now my journey of the last 20 years with health and what I've experienced and what I've learned. So, most people have listened to my podcast for Christian-related material, hopefully, like end-time stuff, news-related things, whatever else. But I want to take a few moments to reintroduce myself and tell you a little bit about my story. As a kid, I suffered from lots of ear infections. Later, I would find out that there's a relationship between the casein protein in milk and ear infections in children. It's actually, believe it or not, a documented relationship, which is very interesting. Now, I've taken inflammatory tests, and I'm not full-on allergic to casein. There's a small reaction for sure, and maybe that reaction was even more sensitive when I was a toddler, which is why the ear infections happened. But nevertheless, we had milk from the cow in Romania. We had this lady that we had the milkmaid. We had old school stuff. So we had really high quality stuff. But nevertheless, for whatever reason, I had ear infections and a lot of ear infections. And that resulted in a lot of really bad health experiences because I had to take a lot of antibiotics. And of course, that screwed my gut. I was also born C-section, which of course, if you know that, there's an association between being born C-section and not receiving certain beneficial bacteria from your mother and so on and so forth. So put those two together and you have a lot of problems as a kid. I had major constipation, and I even got a colonoscopy as a child. I think I was 2 years old when I don't remember it supposedly, but it happened. But nevertheless, my gut health from the very beginning was off to a rocky start, to say the least. Around 1996, after moving to America, I went to Romania and visited a holy, quote unquote, holy monastery. Very special place. I don't remember what the name of the place was, but it's a very isolated type of monastery. And it's like, my dad's friend had basically gone through this radical life change. He used to be, totally ways of the world. And then he's had supposedly some sort of conversion moment, and we wanted to go see him at this monastery because he was friends with the monks. And supposedly this monastery is like super holy, so you can't really, it's hard to get to it. And when we went there, we had a lot of trouble getting to it. A lot of delays, almost an accident, all kinds of stuff. So of course, being superstitious, I didn't have any discernment at the time. You think like, oh man, this is the real deal. This is the real deal. Like, this place is really holy. And we had some interesting experiences. The monks there basically convinced me that when Jesus returns, everybody who's eating meat is going to burn alive. And so obviously I don't believe that today, but at the time, being 12 years old or something like that, it was very traumatic, to say the least. So being a type A perfectionist, very anxious individual, I basically became a vegan, quote unquote, a vegan. And I avoided everything, even sugar. I didn't eat sugar for a while because I thought they told me it was crystallized with animal bones, however they do that. But I don't know if that's true or not anymore. But either way, for a while, I didn't even eat sugar. I was super legalist. But the problem was I wasn't even eating like healthy foods, right? I was eating like chips and, microwave soy pizza and all kinds of like horrible things that you should not be eating, especially as a growing teenager. So this is the problem. I was very much into that level of disordered eating, which we'll talk about later. Around that time also, not in the same trip, but either a year or before or a year after, somewhere around there, I also had an emergency appendectomy in Romania, which was, I almost died. I almost died because I had this pain in my lower belly. And, they thought it was like a stomach flu or something. So they laid me on the bed. They put like I was out in the boonies, right? I was out in the boonies, like the farmlands with my uncles and cousins and stuff. And they put like this blanket over my stomach, and they put like a hot iron to warm my stomach up, which is absolutely stupid to do. Of course, it's not their fault, but you don't do that with an infection because the heat will accelerate things and it could pop, and then you're really, SOL. So thank God preserved me. That was one of the many times in my life that I look back and say, yeah, that was God's hand on my life, that he preserved my life. I could have died. And we rushed to the hospital, the nearest hospital, which was like, 50 miles away or something. And I had an operation, and they gave me a spinal tap, which was very traumatic as a 11, 12-year-old, whatever it was. And I had an operation done. Of course, it took my appendix out. So that was also another digestive, punch to my digestive system, and taking antibiotics and, all kinds of things. They were injecting my butt so many times with different antibiotics that I literally couldn't sit for like a week afterwards as a 12-year-old kid. So it was pretty fun. Later, a couple years later, in 2003, I had a sporting accident. I was playing racquetball with a girlfriend and trying to, be cool and show off. And I was running backwards, and I misjudged the distance between my body and the wall of the racquetball court. And I slammed against the back really, really hard. At the time, I didn't know what happened, but I later found out that my ribs had gotten displaced slightly from the sternum, which, relatively easy fix with the chiropractor. But if you don't know what it is and you have this sharp pain in your chest, you start to freak out. And that's what happened to me. In perfect timing, when I was having an argument with her later that night, and we're arguing about something, probably relational issues, and then suddenly my chest starts hurting, like literally a knife is going through my chest. So painful. And, the last thing you want to do with that is Google the symptoms. And that's what I did. And of course, that led to a panic attack because I thought I was dying. I thought, I'm having a heart attack. And my heart started racing. I'm like, oh my gosh, the heart is having a heart attack. It's probably pumping. And I went through my first panic disorder, like panic episode. And that, not being aware of what that was, it took me for a ride. I dealt with panic disorder where we're talking, I'm driving and something just kicks in and I feel my heart, I'm aware of my heartbeat. And then that triggers the feeling again and I have to pull off to the side of the road and stop. I dealt with that for years. And that experience, that anxious experience and situation, eventually led me to take care of my health. My mom was seeing a nutritionist at the time. He's dead now, but he was a disabled guy, but he had done a lot for himself with nutrition. He had muscular dystrophy. So he was disabled, but he had done quite a lot for himself with nutrition. And he was seeing people and, he was doing all kinds of testing and things like that. So my mom recommended him to me and I developed a relationship with him for about 10 years. We were doing all kinds of things like testing the blood under the microscope, testing hair tests for toxins and all kinds of different things, various antioxidant tests, all kinds of, I was like a little lab rat to him. And of course, he got some information out of that and I got a lot of information and we were just learning. We were learning as we went because at the time there was no AI. The internet was not even really much of a thing at the time in 2003, 2004. So that was the first step towards all of the things that I'm doing today with nutrition. Eventually, I realized there were things that I was doing that weren't very good, and I let go of those things. Like hair testing, for example. Hair testing is not an accurate measurement of nutritional status. It's just not. I know maybe some functional medicine doctors will disagree with that, but the reality is there are some very talented people that can look at a hair test score and based on the patterns that are there, they can tell you kind of what's going on in your body. There are, and I document those in my book. But the reality is, for the most part, hair tests are only valuable for toxic metals like cadmium, aluminum, mercury, I think, is also tested on there as well. All these kinds of things, because the hair is a tissue. However, it's not the most accurate. It's not for chronic exposure. And it's not for acute exposure. I'm sorry. Acute exposure, like in the urine, is much better. Anyway, we can talk more about that in the future section on detoxing. But the point is that a lot of these things I realized, okay, I'm not going to believe in this anymore. So it was a journey, but nevertheless, that helped me to get organized with nutrition. I was starting to measure things and starting to pay attention to my health. And of course, I swung in the obsessive compulsive, direction. And today I'm much more narrow about it, I think. But nevertheless, that was my first experience. And it was useful. God used it for the good to give me discipline with my health because I wasn't very disciplined. On one side, I was very legalistic as a teenager, being a quote unquote vegan. And then after that, I went to college and I was like eating fast food and being totally laissez-faire with my diet, didn't care about anything, just doing whatever, drinking soda, drinking beer, all kinds of stuff. And then that's when this whole anxiety stuff happened, which pushed me back towards my health. And of course, again, I swung back the other way. I was a little more legalistic about it. So, you swing to and fro, and the goal is to eventually find as narrow a road as you can. Nevertheless, a couple of years more later in 2010, I experienced my first bout of adrenal fatigue. Because of a lot of things. I was working for the Social Security Administration, believe it or not. Very stressful job because especially I didn't want to be there. It's not my shtick. And my partnership of 7 years was crumbling. I was trying to be a professional dancer and run my business and go to work. And it was way too much stress, chronic stress. And I just collapsed. I just had fatigue every single day. I was exhausted. No matter how much I would sleep, I was totally exhausted. And that led me to some other things. I read a book by Dr. Wilson called Dr. Wilson's Adrenal Fatigue, I think it's called. A lot of good principles in there that discuss how to recover from adrenal fatigue, which is very important because I think it's something that everybody deals with to some extent. Of course, modern medicine doesn't recognize that, but it does exist because there is a disease and then there is a spectrum before you get to that disease. Modern allopathic medicine does not recognize the spectrum. It doesn't recognize the spectrum. It recognizes when things are broken, like all the way broken, like what's it called? Was it Addison's disease? I think Addison's disease is the cortisol problem with the adrenals, but it's a genetic problem. But nevertheless, you have, or Cushing's, was it Cushing's or Addison's? I forget. Anyway, one of those two. Maybe there's two different kinds, but you have a spectrum of adrenal insufficiency. And that happens because of stress, that happens because of toxins, because of all kinds of things. In my case, the main contributor was stress. And so I learned through that experience about other things like traditional Chinese medicine, through Chinese teas, acupuncture. Those things helped quite a lot at that time to recover. The teas especially were very useful. So there's a lot of interesting things with Chinese medicine because they see things very differently. They see the body very differently. They see medicine very differently. They use herbs, not, chemicals, which herbs, if you think about it, herbs are still chemicals, right? But they're natural chemicals. They're chemicals that God put into the earth. So anyway, they're not man-made. And so that was really helpful. And it helped to expand my view of health because I was very much from, doing the supplemental thing and hair testing and thing. I was very locked into a particular worldview. And that helped me to expand my worldview into other modalities. In 2018, 8 years later, I started my podcast and I began interviewing experts on all kinds of things, biohacking, digestion, aging, nutrition, all kinds of stuff. At that time, when I started my podcast, I'd been already teaching and competing professionally for about 8 years. So nutrition was very important to me. Performance was very important to me. Maximizing my energy was the most important to me at that time. It still is important to me today. I have to have energy for what I do because otherwise, if you're just exhausted all the time, you can't be at your best. And I think that's important. So I was also seeking something important to pursue because I was getting sick and tired of my job at the dance studio that I was working at. It was getting toxic. I was realizing that this is not for me. I want to have my own thing. I want to do my own thing. So I thought interviews could be fun. And I interviewed a lot of people. I interviewed a lot of experts. And like I said, I've posted some of those expert interviews on the health page. That year, I also quit my job as a dance teacher, which was very important. Pretty much all hell broke loose because my old boss was kind of a snake. He threatened me with a lawsuit. Of course, he wasn't successful because he broke his contract by firing me. But nevertheless, I lost a lot of clients. I lost at least half of my business overnight because of the drama and the uncertainty and everything else. I had no savings. I had no plan. I had nothing. So I sold all of my stuff. I moved in with my parents to bunker down in case I was getting sued and everything else and, tried to rebuild. By 2019, a year later, I had rebuilt some of my business. Some of my students came and pursued me and I got a few new ones, but it wasn't anything crazy. I was burning the candle at both ends, trying to be a entrepreneur and teaching and competing professionally and having online business and doing all these things again, just like I was in 2010, only just different packaging. It was too much. And I eventually my body broke because it was too much. I couldn't use my body to make income forever. And I knew that. So I thought to myself, I need to find a way to make money online. I need to find a way to monetize my information, my knowledge, rather than just keeping it between me and my students. Do you get it? Like when I taught a lesson, I really enjoyed working with people. I really do. One-on-one, I love doing that stuff. But then it's gone forever, right? That person is the one who's your vessel that carries your information forward. And then if they quit taking lessons, then that's it. You got to start from beginning. And I was like, this is a racket. I don't like this. I want to have permanent impact. I want things to work for me. That doesn't make any sense. So I wanted to, and again, I couldn't use my body forever. It was becoming very obvious to me at that point. In 2018, 2019, my body was starting to slow down. I was 35. I was like, this is getting a little harder than it used to be in my 20s, pushing my body to the max like this. So I realized I had to do something different. But in 2019, with all the things that were going on, my body just broke. It broke. And stress because of cortisol and HPA imbalances, which we'll talk about today, basically started to disrupt my sleep. I would wake up, either I would have a hard time sleeping, or I would wake up in the middle of the night multiple times. I would have to pee, the usual song and dance that happens with these things. Or I'd wake up earlier than I'd have to, but I'm, wired out. These kinds of imbalances that are very common. Around that time in 2019, I also took a flu shot. Don't ask me why. I didn't know all the things I did about the vaccines at that time. And who knows, that probably worsened the situation by adding all sorts of toxic metals and things to it. And another thing that happened in 2019 was that I began taking iodine on a therapeutic level. and I didn't have anybody to guide me, and I certainly didn't have the knowledge to deal with all the things that were about to happen to me by taking iodine. So it only made these things worse. And we'll talk about these things when we get to the thyroid portion, because therapeutic iodine can be useful, but after everything I've experienced, I don't recommend it. I don't. I think you should take iodine, but I think you should stay within physiological doses and focus on the cofactors like selenium, zinc, magnesium, and so on. And we'll talk about that. But nevertheless, I was taking therapeutic iodine. I was taking about 25 milligrams a day. And that shut down my thyroid. So you're dealing with stress, you're dealing with probably toxins from the flu shot, and you're dealing with chemical suppression by iodine. All of it just went boom, just suppressed my body, and it just shut me down into a locked in, subpar state for many years that I'm only now recently recovering from. In 2020, a year later, I attended a 3-day training seminar through a company called Optimal Health, which I interviewed the owner of. They were the ones that I was first dealing with through this nutritionist that I was working with. So I've known them for quite a while, and they do a lot of work with doctors, and so they do these certification programs. So I attended these and got certified. I also started doing health coaching one-on-one around that time, and coaching people and offering that through my platform. I was also writing my book at that time, then Dance Your Way Through Life. And so it was really starting to move in that direction of, okay, maybe this is my thing, is doing health coaching and personal growth coaching, whatever else I was trying to do. However, from 2020 onward to about 2024, everything kind of took a dive, obviously with COVID, with, everything else, like with my stress, with my finances, everything just kind of, God said, nope, you're not doing that. I'm going to use that later. You're just going to take a break for now. And, I talk about this in my gratitude book, but the long story short is that there are many factors in health, right? Especially with the whole iodine thing and the things that I experienced. Some things we just don't know. Sometimes we can have a lot of information. I certainly have a lot of information. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I've learned quite a lot. I've studied quite a lot. And sometimes we still may not know what to do. That's the profound aspect of health. I remember talking to one doctor, I think it was in 2021, who was like an expert in insulin resistance. He's like one of the top people in his field. And yet he's insulin resistant. And he couldn't figure out why. So, go figure. Sometimes health is there to give you a short-term challenge. And other times you'll have to wrestle with these challenges regardless of what you do or what you know, because it's about leaning on God. So there are spiritual components to your health struggles. And we don't know which is which. And that's a process of discovery and prayer and patience and persistence. As far as nutrition, I probably know more than most mainstream doctors. I'm pretty confident in that. As far as nutrition and supplementation, I know more than most doctors, because doctors aren't trained on these things. They get maybe like one nutrition class and that's it. They're trained on how to diagnose diseases and prescribe medications, unfortunately. However, I'm not a clinician, and I'm going to say that right off the top. I'm not a clinician. A clinician is somebody who, first off, is usually a doctor, but they have experience treating diseases. They have experience managing diseases and bringing them back to health. That's very valuable experience. I have a case of one, right? In my case, of course, I've coached other people and I've given them some good advice and seen some results, but I'm not a clinician. I'm not. And having a good clinician is very important, because somebody with experience can look at you and say, the thing that you think is right is actually, you may want to do something differently. And of course, there are many opinions on the same thing, right? So that's why it's a constant practice. I've seen so many doctors that are all very highly qualified, especially with the iodine stuff, and some of them couldn't even give me answers that I was looking for. Or they gave me things that were just like, okay, like that doesn't work. So it's always a journey. I have a lot of knowledge that God has given me, and I don't want to let it go to waste. So that's why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So this is my motivation for getting all these things out, and I hope that it's edifying to you. Last year, in 2024, I got insurance again for the first time in however many years, a long time. So I began investigating my health and getting health tests again. My financial situation improved because of Substack and YouTube and everything else, so thank God for that. And this allowed me to pay for doctors, get some supplements again, and basically redo my health strategies. My thyroid was very suppressed until 2024. And then basically I quit. I quit taking iodine. I did some tests. I let it come back a little bit. And in the fall, I started taking iodine at a very low dose, about 6 milligrams, which is still a therapeutic dose. Anything greater than a milligram is a therapeutic dose. And again, we'll talk about that in the thyroid section. My thyroid improved, actually better than it had been in the last 5 years. But in the spring, the thyroid crashed again because of the mechanics of high dose iodine, which basically ends up saturating your thyroid, and your thyroid can panic and say, nope, okay, shut everything down because it's too much iodine, no matter how well you're doing. So that basically happened as of the time of this recording, like 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, something like that. So I stopped taking iodine for a month, and I went on a regular 225 microgram, not milligram, microgram dose, which is a physiological dose. And I've been feeling better. It's pretty wild, man. It's really wild. Everybody's different. If with me, the thyroid symptoms, I know that my thyroid is suppressed when I start feeling like palpitations and skipping beats in my heart, especially because my vagal tone is very high from speaking a lot and from, being a professional athlete. It makes much more sensitive to these skipped beats that happen. And when my thyroid crashed, I could totally feel a lot more of these. I'm like, dude, there's something wrong with my thyroid. I have to check. And lo and behold, I was right. And so once I stopped doing that, I'm back on regular dose. I felt much better. So we'll see. These things take time to heal. I've only been taking regular iodine for about 2 or 3 weeks now. So it's going to be a few months, but nevertheless, I'm done with that journey. I'm never taking high dose iodine again. I don't have to live in uncertainty. I'm on the road to recovery now. So there's that. In the last year, I also did 2 rounds of chelation using EDTA and DMSA suppositories, which we'll talk about there as well. They're probably the cheapest way to do metal chelation, which I suggest for everybody. I really do, after everything I've learned. And the thing that I've learned through this process was that no matter how healthy you think you are, there's always poison somewhere. There really is. I'll show you my toxin scores, and you'll see for yourself that even with the things that I do, which is probably less than 1% of the population, as far as my discipline and the nutrients that I put in my body, even with all that, there's still plenty of really nasty toxins in my body that need to be dealt with. So these things are sometimes chronically there from your environment. Who knows? Some of them are very difficult to understand. Like I have thallium and cesium. I'm not sucking on any, nuclear reactors, and I don't know, maybe Jesuits are trying to poison me or something, but nevertheless, they're there. And despite taking lots of nutrition, so the body can't necessarily get rid of these, they have to be chelated. Meaning, I'm going to do a chelation round every year, and I suggest everybody to do the same. This year, 2025, I had a really bad stomach flu in January, and I launched the store around that time. I was writing my devotional, a lot of stress, combined with everything going on and creating, constantly, hours and hours of content, everything else. My stomach kind of got really disbalanced. I was also doing, after the stomach flu, about a couple weeks later, for whatever stupid reason, I thought, maybe I should do a biofilm cleanse and cleanse the biofilm in my gut to help, basically reset the gut. Because biofilm can develop if you have, a dysbiosis, meaning a growth of bad bacteria, because they form little films to protect themselves. And so you can take enzymes on an empty stomach. You can take antimicrobials, things like this to kind of get rid of that. I didn't have any test. I didn't have a stool test to make that decision, which you should do. I just did it intuitively, which was a stupid idea. And it caused even more of a problem. So between the stress, between the stomach flu, between the antimicrobials and everything else I threw my gut out of whack. And I started getting gut pains, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I had like test after test, H. pylori, stool tests at my doctor's office, all kinds of stuff. And finally, I took a really fancy stool test through Vibrant Healthcare, which I use for all kinds of tests. You'll see some examples of it in today's presentation, but I realized, my gut is really out of balance. It's inflamed. All the bad bugs that shouldn't be growing are growing. All the good bugs that should be growing are not growing. So anyway, I've been working on that for like the last 3 months, getting my gut back in alignment. And finally, I started to, figure out what it is and put the right products and do the right research to say, okay, what can I add to this? And this is all going to come into everything that you can use as well too. Because again, everything that I'm doing, I'm sharing it with you. On the Ultimate Recovery Stack, there's a lot of great products there that are research proven And we'll go through them because they're very unique products, very powerful, unique products that I'm using myself as well. So anyway, this is my story. It's been up and down. Today I'm still recovering. I'm still learning. I'm still practicing health and the things that I know. It's been a slow grind, especially in the last 5 to 6 years with the iodine stuff and not knowing, because nobody could give me answers. And in fact, I ended up just talking to ChatGPT. I said, hey, evaluate for me Guy Abraham's research and answer for me this question. Tell me the critiques, tell me this, tell me that. And I was going through this conversation with the robot. I'm like, I got more out of my time with this free robot than I did after paying hundreds of dollars to all these iodine-trained doctors who could not tell me, why am I getting such inconsistent results with iodine? And why am I playing so many ping pong games? So anyway, long story short, it's been a real grind. I've struggled with disrupted sleep, with adrenal imbalances, either being too hyper, too tired, a sluggish thyroid, which hopefully will be fixed. I used to have spasms all over my body. My face would spasm, my muscles would spasm for whatever reason. Who knows? Maybe it was toxins. Maybe it was just the thyroid imbalances, the HPA imbalances. Who knows? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. Today, it's gone for the most part. But nevertheless, that used to happen. Even the slightest thing would throw me off and make me either too hyper or exhausted. If I took any kind of like B5 or adrenal stimulator or adrenal gland, you could take glandulars to help your adrenals, I would be wired the next day. If, I took too much phosphatidylserine, which you'll learn about in the adrenal section to help reduce your cortisol. If you took too much of that, you'd be exhausted the next day. So it's been a constant, up and down. There's no rhyme or reason to any of these issues because they're HPA imbalances. HPA imbalances are very irregular and they're a constant dance. Talk about finding the narrow road. And I think that's why God has given me these problems, to basically really practice the narrow road, practice what you preach, right? So overall, though, I'm healthy. I thank God. But some things are a mystery to me. Some things are a mystery. Again, I'm not a clinician. I know a lot of the basics. I'm doing everything I can. But recovery can sometimes take a long time. Sometimes you'll be in a season of life because that season is there to get you closer to God. And certainly I can attest to that. So maybe God will reveal some answers to you, maybe not. The point is that we do the best we can until that point in time. I've learned a lot. I've written a lot. But one thing that I've realized is that health is not black and white. It's a spectrum of many shades of gray. And it's different for everybody. However, that's why it's so important to have a foundation. Because everybody is human. And human nutrition is human nutrition. It's not dog nutrition or cat nutrition. And understanding the basic principles will help you customize your own plan and make educated decisions. You can, today more than ever, with AI, with genetic testing, with all kinds of tools, God has given us tools to deal with the satanic toxicity and evil of this world. And more than ever today, you are empowered to be able to make informed decisions. Do not be passive. Use the tools at your disposal and create a health plan to get yourself a good foundation. It's just like with the scriptures, right? Same thing. It's always about your ability to interpret the Bible and have good hermeneutics and know basic history. Those are the foundations of reading the Bible. If you don't have that foundation, you're not going to interpret correctly or you'll make mistakes. Most people don't have those foundations. Therefore, their spiritual health, quotation marks, is poor. Today, my health routine is very elaborate, and I'm still very disciplined. I don't believe you need to be as crazy as I am and to do all the things that I do, but I do believe everybody should have a comprehensive nutrition program of vitamins and minerals and maybe some other things that will help reduce inflammation depending on their particular situation. And I discuss this in all of my book and articles. I've shared my personal hacks, the things that I use, my routines, my sequence of how I do things in these various articles. So you're free to reproduce it all or part of it or whatever you find useful. And again, we'll go through some of them like the Ultimate Recovery Stack in this presentation as well. When I wrote my book, Dance Your Way Through Life, I wanted to live forever. I wanted to live forever and do whatever I could to wait until technology would come around to afford us the possibility of life, eternal life, so that I could travel the stars and go to different planets and all this kind of stuff. So I was completely deluded, okay? I put my trust in supplements and experts and my own knowledge. I was very deceived by synergism, by heliocentrism, transhumanism, New Age, all kinds of stuff, all the flavors. Today, I think very differently, folks. I want to just be as healthy as I possibly can so that I'm capable to help others and influence others in a positive way and spread the truth, because there is great energy required to do the things that I do. And my goal is to be as healthy as I can. When I don't have the energy, I rely on God, and God sustains me either way, whether I have energy or not. But nevertheless, my goal from my perspective, in the first-person shooter perspective, right, of the video game, is to work on keeping my body as healthy as possible so that I can be of use and not be a burden to anybody. My hope is in the resurrection and the return of Christ, because it's the only way out of this matrix. And your hope should be in that too. That should be your primary hope. However, like with all things, it's a dance. Though our hope is in that final outcome, God's grace works in real time through our lives, through knowledge, through action, through new desires, through a sense of motivation, through discipline. All of these things that you experience come from God. My discipline with my nutrition, my knowledge of my nutrition, is God's grace working in my life. In the past, I was blind to God's grace and I was deceived by synergism. Today, I'm still very disciplined with my nutrition. In fact, I'm very disciplined. I don't recommend that you do everything I do, but nevertheless, if you want to, you can. But if you experience that level of discipline, it's because God is working that discipline through your life and giving you that discipline. So God's grace is active and real and working in our life through the things that we experience, like motivation, discipline, knowledge, wisdom, and so on. So I hope that these things inspire you. I hope that they motivate you to revisit your health and take new actions so that you can be healthy for the rest of the journey, however long that journey is. That's our narrow road perspective today. We hope in the resurrection, but at the same time, we do not neglect our present life either. Both of these things are not mutually exclusive. They're actually complementary. They're complementary because our hope in the resurrection should motivate us to share the truth with others. And what helps you share the truth is having a healthy body and a healthy mind so that you can have energy and you can have as much impact as possible with the things that God has given you. We want to be healthy enough to be capable and to lead and not be a burden to anybody and not be an easy target for the Templar cyborgs. We know that this body is dying, but of course life is also a gift from God and we should treat it with care. We should. The body is an amazing instrument. And the more you study it, the more you realize the genius of God in everything. It's so profound. So profound. So many mechanisms that we're still discovering in cell nutrition and cell mechanics and just everything, organ systems and how they communicate with each other and the gut and the nervous system and all. It is so mind-bogglingly complex. It's so profound. It's an amazing instrument. And I think that part of this journey of health is also to help you marvel at God, right? Is to help you marvel at God so that you can reconnect to the creator of the universe through, everything is supposed to lead you to God. Whether you're studying chemistry or physics or theology, it's supposed to lead you back to God because God created it all. So health in this sense, my goal is to help inspire you to study health, to learn what it means that, you're eating macronutrients and protein and, what is a lipid layer on your cells and all these things. And what is that? Be curious about it. And as you learn, you're like, wow, God designed all of these things. It's so fascinating how all these nutrients work together and how this has its own place there. And if you do too much of this, then you do too little of that or whatever else. And that helps you marvel at God. So that's really the goal of all of these things. My perspective today on health is not the following. Running to the woods and living off-grid. It's impossible anyway to do that. The more you are off-grid, the more difficult it is. It's almost impossible to live completely off-grid. It's not taking a bunch of crazy anti-aging supplements to extend my lifespan to 120 or 150, because the world's not going to be around in that point in time. It'll be eternity at that point, but at that point, time is going to be meaningless. It's also not to do some crazy diet to get to 8% body fat or something like that. It's also not exercising to have a perfect body. So my view on health is not any of those things. My view on health is learning how to support my body with affordable, basic tools that are very low risk, but they have high reward so that they can fight inflammation and help me recover. Number 2, keeping your brain healthy. That's also very important so that you're not susceptible to deception, anxiety, depression, having mental endurance. Your brain as a physical thing has to be healthy as possible in order for you to reap the rewards. The brain is very, very important. Brain health is very important. If you're having brain fog all the time, that means you have gut issues or toxins or whatever else, and you need to look into that so that you can open the door for creativity, for gratitude. It's so much hard. I talk about this in my gratitude book, but it's so much harder to be grateful if your brain is just like, good, and you have brain fog and you're low energy. And of course, some of those times are very important spiritually because they're tests. When you wake up tired, it's like, okay, I got to practice the gratitude no matter what. But it's so much easier when your neurotransmitters are working and your brain doesn't have inflammation and brain fog and everything else, right? So we want to do our best to keep our brain healthy. It's also learning timeless principles of eating. So how you can eat clean, eat simple, and eat healthy. How do you do that? How do you plan your meals without too much stress? How do you minimize toxins and toxic influences in your environment? How do you detox and create good health habits so you prevent these things as much as possible? You're not going to prevent them all the way, I can tell you that. But how do you do it as much as possible? And how do you build strength and flexibility in your body so that you have physical capability? Of course, everybody's different. The point is, for you, what does that look like? Where are you at now? And where could you be to be your best, most limber, physical, strong self? Where is that? And what does that look like for you? Maybe it looks like total revamping of your workout plan. Maybe it just means tweaking a few things. I don't know. I often talk about things being a dance between two ideas that are complementary with each other. In this particular conversation of health, you have personal responsibility and surrender on the other side. In order to take action on anything, you have to have a perspective. You have to choose a perspective so that you can take action on it, right? If you don't have a perspective, you're not going to take any action. So action and beliefs are intertwined. In order to take action in the world, you must have a perspective. That's why before you are born again, you have a certain limited amount of actions available to you because you have a certain perspective. You're in the world. God erases that perspective, installs a new perspective, and you have new actions and new desires, right? Memory is from the old one, so that's your flesh kicking in, but nevertheless, you have a new operating system. So you have to take a perspective in order to take action. However, in the world that we live in, because of the way it works, when you take a perspective, that's a path, right? I have to be healthy. I'm going to track all my nutrients, okay? That's a perspective. It's a path that leads somewhere. And eventually, every single path that you take, eventually, if you follow it with enough intensity, it becomes an imbalance. Do you get it? If you say, let's say you're like I was very lax. I was eating fast food and everything else. Then I suddenly went into like hardcore OCD mode, tracking all my nutrients, tracking all my, tests and everything else. I was one to the other. There is truth on both sides. There is truth on the side of, you need to relax and enjoy life. Okay, don't be so anal about everything. There's also truth of like, hey, you need to keep track and understand what's happening. Otherwise, you might be doing more harm to yourself than good. So there's truth on both sides. The narrow road is understanding that, okay, I walk on this path, then I have another path that I engage. So it's like this. It moves a little bit. It's a dance because, again, you have two complementary opposites. Everything that you do, if you do it enough that way or the other way, it becomes an imbalance. If you walk toward personal responsibility too much, you're going to get attached to the world and to your body, which is what I was doing before 2021. If you surrender too much, say, it's okay, God's got it, I'm not going to do anything with my health. Well, then you're just being complacent. You're being complacent, and ultimately you're neglecting a gift that God has given you. So don't be complacent and don't be OCD. That's the narrow road. It's about using both. You have to use both to have discernment, right? If you look at the book of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs is written in a dualistic way. There's always two things being highlighted to you so that you understand the narrow road in between and how to use right judgment. And Solomon is famous for asking God for wisdom. And wisdom is just that. Wisdom is understanding when is it right to do what, at what time. When is it right or wrong? If I give water to a plant, That's good. But really, is it? If I give like a gallon of water to a little sprout, you're going to drown it and uproot it and destroy it. If I give a drop of water to a tree, well, it's not going to do anything. That tree's going to starve. So how much and when is very important. Otherwise, something that seems that is good, giving water to a plant, could be evil. So this is wisdom, folks, and wisdom involves understanding when to do what. And in order to understand when to do what, you have to understand both sides. And not walk in extremes, but rather utilize both and walk the narrow road. That's the focus of everything I do. From my experience in dancing and, of course, throughout the last 20 years, even in health and everything else. What is coming with all of these end times events is going to increase your stress. Guaranteed. That's guaranteed. We don't know what God has planned for any of us, but what is coming is going to be very stressful. It's important to have as many physical and mental reserves as you possibly can, and also to be free of the influence and dependence, I should say, on medications, big pharma, institutionalized medicine, and so on. And of course, we leave the rest to God. It's important to have mental clarity so you can be focused and sharp, and be able to react quickly and think and plan and do what you need to do. Be creative, be resourceful. The world is very toxic. There's been a lot of placenta studies that have been done. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they've studied the placentas of many women. And even from the womb, you already start out with, I think they found like the average one was like 200 something foreign chemicals in a placenta, microplastics, toxins, all kinds. It's just so sad and so disgusting. Imagine. And on top of that, then you get vaccinated 1 million times. And then you're eating pesticides. I mean, it's like, it is a miracle that the body is able to withstand such assault. It's truly profound. It's truly, really profound. But you can't be dependent on health systems. You can't be dependent on your doctor. You can't be dependent on anybody. These systems are evil. Even if the people in them are well-meaning, they are part of an evil system. The doctors are not trained how to make you better. They're trained on how to give you meds. Most of them, unless you're going to like a naturopath and so on and so forth. But then, those things can be expensive too because they don't cover insurance. I've paid like $400 for an hour with a fancy schmancy doctor, which is a lot of money. That's a lot of money to pay. I mean, ask anybody. I just can't imagine, like, okay, I could see $100, $150, maybe $200, but $400 for an hour and a half or whatever it is, it's an insane amount of money. Anyway, if you do live long enough to get kicked out of society, then being in a chronic condition or having weaknesses, diseases, various incapacitations, it's going to make things worse. Again, we don't know what God has planned for us. Maybe that is his plan for you. Maybe his plan is for you to live, but to be incapacitated so that you rely on him. Maybe it is. We don't know that, but we try our best, and this is what's important. I realized today that all the work that I did before was so that I could help God's elect with these goals in the end times, because this is why we're all here, folks. This is the final generation, I believe. And God has given us information to be able to help each other and to help other people that need to come into this truth. And part of that, not the major part, but a small part and a significant part, is being healthy. And I think it's an important thing. We don't put our hope in the physical, we prepare for it nonetheless. The book of Proverbs has a great quote on that. It says, "The horse is made ready for battle, but the victory belongs to Yahweh." And this is a constant theme in the Bible, which is the theme of this dance between the human and the divine. The horse is made ready for battle. Yes, we do not know what the battle holds. Why? Because the victory belongs to Yahweh. God is the one who has appointed the victory or the defeat. But from our perspective, because we're not on the circle of the earth observing all things, we're in real time. We prepare nonetheless. So this is the quote for today. The victory's already been had in our case because Jesus is returning and destroying this evil system. Nevertheless, we prepare for that victory also. This is the dance of life. We don't know what the future holds, but we also can't be complacent. God acts in our lives by giving us solutions, resources, motivation, action, knowledge. All of these things are good if they're used with wisdom. So take action, have motivation, revamp your health life, get healthier, get stronger, so that you can really participate in this thing that is happening, this momentous thing, the revealing of the self-existent God and the going out of his Spirit into the world and reclaiming lost souls for himself. So you can participate in that thing to the most of your ability. That's my invitation to you. Now, another thing is this. All that you study should bring you closer to God. We mentioned this before. God created reality to reveal his glory. It's good. Physical reality is a good thing. So we can find God through studying anything in the physical world, whether it's, again, physics, chemistry, nutrition, math, dancing, or the Bible. I believe the complexities of health are designed for us to marvel at life, at the mystery of life. It's such a profound mystery. I used to think that studying health was kind of like a puzzle that needed to be fixed. And then if you could eventually figure everything out, then you'd have eternal life and fix the puzzle, which of course is a lie. And a lot of people are deceived by that lie. There's the transhumanism crowd, the biohacking crowd, the longevity crowd. They're deceived by that lie. It's the forbidden fruit. Today, I don't believe that, but I think studying health is fascinating, and it's a source of awe like anything else. I love studying anything. I love studying physics or chemistry or history or scripture, anything, because it always leads to God in a unique way in that sense. So it's just like, I'm thinking now, this is all roads lead to Rome, right? That's the counterfeit. Do you get it? Because all roads lead to God in reality, in truth. If you study something deep enough, it always comes back to God. But the counterfeit of that is all roads lead to Rome, except one. The narrow road doesn't lead to Rome, but all roads lead to Rome. So it's an interesting little idea there. But nevertheless, you study things like the engineering and mechanisms of cells, the mitochondria, the chemicals that we have, the neurotransmitters, the various enzymes, the organs. It's such a marvel. It really is. And it reminds us, again, that the world is broken because of the Genesis curse, because of sin, and we need a Savior. There's a section in this presentation we'll talk about with aging. I've studied aging quite a bit. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I've studied it a lot. I've read a lot of books. I've listened to a lot of experts. I've interviewed experts. And at the end of the day, they're never going to figure out the cure for eternal life, or for the cure for aging, let's put it that way. They're never going to figure that out. It's too complicated. It's not possible. There's too many factors with cell mechanics, mitochondria, methylation, genetic SNPs, epigenetic pathways, diet. There's so many things going on. And of course, there are things that are figuring out. And of course, God allows these discoveries to happen. And, Satan will use it for evil. God will use it for good. But nevertheless, we're dying every day, and you can't change that. Just like studying anything reveals God's glory, it also reveals the gospel. Studying health reveals God's glory as a creator and a genius and an infinite mind. But studying these things also reveals the gospel, because you realize, wow, like aging is just a set thing. There's no way to undo it. You can have a healthy life. You can increase your health span, meaning how many of the years out of your total years are healthy years. That's true. Certainly. But you can't live forever. You can't. There's no eternal life outside of God. There really isn't. And I think that studying health is a unique way to really get present to that. I think that's something that, if you're watching my channel, you already know that for the most part. But on a deeper level, you can really feel that when you study health, when you see the actual mechanics of these cells, the limitations of mitochondria, the limitations of senescent cells, of telomeres shortening, of all these things that are happening all the time. That's like literally coded into reality. And it's like, wow, the Genesis curse is real, man. And it's a fascinating moment to realize that we are dying. We're dying. And because of that, what does that mean? Well, we need to repent. We need to come back to God. We need to have a Savior, because this world is dying. In physics, you study entropy, which is the tendency of things to go from order to disorder. And entropy is balanced with something else called negentropy, which is the opposite, where things are spontaneously organizing into systems of order. Think schools of fish, schools of birds, that kind of thing. However, in our reality, entropy outweighs negentropy because of the Genesis curse. Things tend overall to go to disorder and change and lose energy and everything else. So our body is fighting entropy as much as it can every single day, but it loses the battle. eventually. And this is why we need a savior. Today we live in a very, very evil and toxic and satanic world. And the end is right on the horizon. So I hope these things will help you incorporate timeless basics and foundations into your own routine so that you can see what I see and walk the narrow road on this topic and not be too obsessed with health, but also not be complacent. So this is our journey today, folks. I'm going to go over all the major topics of health and just do like an overview. I'll give you some strategies. I'll comment on things that just come to me and that I've written down. If you want the full details, then obviously check out my book, grab a book, and there's the new health page that's full of resources there, all sorts of articles. You can get a sneak peek into my own routines and things that I do there as well on a daily basis. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to try to answer them as best as I can, or you can go to the Fennec Fox chat. Again, I'm not a clinician, but I can give you my take on something. I'm happy to do that. These presentation notes will be available in the health section of the library, along with the videos and everything else in separate videos, because I'm going to post this entire thing on YouTube, but then in the actual library, it's going to be separate videos. And they're not in any particular order. So just realize that this is not in any particular order. It's just, I've written them down in the various sequences. All of these are important to work on every single day. And depending on where you're at, you may need to prioritize one or two of these more than the others, right? So that's the idea. Now, just a quick disclaimer so that we can have that on the books. This presentation is intended for educational purposes. I'm not a doctor, nor am I diagnosing anything. If you find any of this useful, please consult your health team or your second opinion person, whoever you happen to have, and do your own research. Everything I'm presenting to you here is very relatively harmless. It's based on research. It's based on my own experience. But everybody's different, depending on your genetics, on your medications that you're taking, the diseases that you're currently dealing with. Everybody's health is different. Certain things may not be wise for you to do. So you have to always double check everything. And especially now with AI and everything else, we have quite an easier time to learn and get edified. So also, I want to say this. I wish that I was a picture of optimal health today. I really do. I wish I was. I wish I was back at 10% body fat. I wish I was sleeping like a bear and totally ripped with muscle everywhere, which is not the case. The truth is that it's not possible all the time to be at your highest game. It's just not. I'm coming out of a season of a lot of HPA imbalances. I'm starting to recover, but it's a slow road, especially for the fact that I'm 40 now. Not that that's super old, but it's not 20, okay? It's not 20. Today, I'm 20 pounds heavier than I was when I was competing professionally. I used to be 25 pounds, but I lost some weight in the last few months of really trying and revamping a couple of things and walking more and things like that. I'm just sedentary. I'm doing these things, and it's, when you're stressed out, when you're not looking at your diet, it just goes on like this. The weight just piles on super quick. So I'm about 20 pounds heavier than I used to be when I was competing professionally. Not all of that is fat, because I did gain a few pounds of muscle. But nevertheless, I used to be 10%, 11% body fat. I was 10%, 11% body fat for like 15 years, man. 155 pounds. Lean, mean, dancing machine, right? But now I'm about 17, 18%, and it's coming off little by little. But nevertheless, I'm losing some of it, but it's a real practice. Especially being, dealing with the thyroid stuff that slows everything down in general. And it's a complex game. Obviously, also being self-employed, I have a lot of stress to deal with in general. My sleep has been very disrupted over the last 5 years or so, since 2020, 2019. Today, I have several days when I'm tired or my circadian rhythm is dysregulated. Case in point, before I woke up and did this video today, I woke up like 2 times the other night. It's just like no rhyme or reason. Sometimes I wake up once, sometimes I wake up twice, and it's just, I was like, all right, well, still got to perform today. So, get your energy from somewhere. But nevertheless, I haven't been as active as I used to be. I am pretty active in the sense of like I'm as active as I possibly can. I go to the gym 3 times a week to weight lift. I walk at least 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day on average. I try to get my steps in. I have a good diet, so even with all that, it's very, very a lot of discipline to maintain my results. Whereas before I would just be in the studio all day, I would eat just garbage. God, I would eat such garbage and I wouldn't gain a cent of a weight. So there you go. But I've also had financial ups and downs. I've had many health challenges, as I've described. I've had accidents. I've had my fair share of partying and taking things that weren't necessarily good for my health. I'm now 40 and I don't recover as much. I have a lot of discipline, but I'm still dealing with a lot of issues. I really am. And I recently realized that I had to get a tooth pulled. My tooth on the bottom left side, the nerve is dying. Even though my teeth are fine, the crown on there, because it's pushing on the nerve, it starts to irritate it, and that nerve starts to die, and then the necrotic tissue starts to build up, and then your body's like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. And it's just this cascade of events that has nothing to do with infection or anything else. No, nothing. It just happens. And now I have to get that out, probably get an implant, everything else. So that's going to be surgeries, antibiotics, the whole shebang as usual. It's a never ending situation. It never ends. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't use drugs. I don't drink caffeine. I eat right. I take supplements and I exercise. Yet stress and nervous system dysregulation are really, really important. Despite all of these things, it doesn't matter. Now, of course, again, if I wasn't doing all of these things, I would probably be way worse off than I am today. Way worse off. But I thought I wasn't recording for a second. I'm looking at my screen. I'm like, am I recording? Oh, yeah, I am recording. Goodness gracious. Almost gave me a little mini panic attack. But nevertheless, despite all these things, nervous system regulation, HPA regulation can really be difficult, folks. It really can, especially gut imbalances. I don't feel old. I have always had high energy. My mind has always been being, zinged out because I'm always thinking about stuff. But I do feel older than I did 10 years ago. I do feel older. It happened around 35. When I started to feel like, man, something's different. I'm pushing this a little more. Of course, probably some of that had to do with the stress, and the iodine and everything else. But either way, around 35, I started to feel a difference. In 2021, they had a study published in the Journal of Nature Medicine, I believe it's called. And they found that aging actually comes in waves, predictable waves. Now, those waves may be different slightly for you than they are for me or whatever else by a few years. But generally, you have 3 waves, 34, 60, and 77. And these waves are basically thresholds that you pass. So basically, after your mid-30s, you pass a threshold. Then after around 60, you pass a threshold. And then after around your mid-70s, you pass a final threshold, So there are thresholds. And that's true in my life. Again, after 35, I definitely started to feel a difference. And even with all my discipline and the things that I do, it's still astounding to me that I'm dealing with the things that I'm dealing with. And my body just has such a hard time staying on balance. One thing will push it, like, oh, this and that. The other day I ate less food. Thank you, motorcycle. I ate less food the other day. And probably, I don't know, I skipped a meal, whatever. And maybe my glycogen in my liver was low. I don't know what it was. I went to sleep. I slept great for 4.5 hours. Then I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm starving. I'm my stomach's I'm like, okay, let me just try to sleep. Nope, not happening. So I get up. I have this big turkey and cheese sandwich. And then I try to sleep for another hour and my body's not relaxing. And then I finally fall asleep. And then I sleep for another couple hours. And then I'm exhausted the next day. So I was wired and then I'm exhausted. And then the next day, I am able to not wake up and be hungry, but then I'm waking up multiple times to go to the bathroom. So it's just, it's an ongoing thing, and it's probably going to be like that for a couple more months, maybe even a couple more years. Who knows? Ultimately, I'm doing everything I can to bring my body back in balance. But part of this is not just nutritional, folks. It's also spiritual. Part of it is just for you to struggle, regardless of what you do, because it's conforming you to the image of Christ, who struggled greatly. In the last years, about 3 years or so, I've created over 600 hours of content. Now, imagine for each of those hours, the recording, the editing, the writing, everything else, over 600 hours in 3 years. In the last 3 years, I've released 3 books, totaling probably around 1,500 pages total. I opened a store with countless products. I've dealt with all that. I've never mind the thousands of pages of presentation notes, the comments that I've answered, the hundreds of hours of editing and so on and scheduling. I don't know too many people that have done or are willing to go that far off balance to do something. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. The point is that that's not sustainable. And especially with the issues that I was dealing with, it's not sustainable. It's really not. I've really enjoyed what I've done, but it's not sustainable to do that kind of work ongoing for years and years and years and years and years. You just can't. I don't know anybody that has done that on a sustainable level. So for the first time in my life, in the last few years, I have felt that I do not have my health under control. And that's been a dance of trust with God for me. Because I'm very synergistic. I talk about monergism and predestination and election and, all this kind of stuff that's very important. But I'll be honest with you that when it comes to my health, I'm still a synergist, man. It's still a struggle for me because of my background being perfectionist, a professional athlete that's all about optimal performance and pushing my body to the extreme and having energy as a component of my identity. Do you get it? If I'm low energy, it's like a personal thing for me. So that's been a real dance of trust with God in the last 6 years of not having this under control. Of course, we don't ever have anything under control. It's an illusion. The things that you do think that you have under control, God has given you those things so that you can feel that you have that under control, but really He's the one controlling it. So when He takes that away from you and you realize, oh, I'm not in control, that's a really frustrating situation. And for me, that's been the case with my health, too, especially the sleeping stuff. It's like a Russian roulette. Like, what am I going to get? Let's spin the wheel and say, do you wake up twice? Do you wake up once? Do you wake up, 3 times? Do you wake up hungry? Do you have a hard time sleeping? Do you have insomnia? And you roll the wheel and see what you get. That's been the case for the last 6 years of my life. And of course, with all the things going on, my body's never had a chance to really settle down. I hope that now, with all the things that I'm doing and being done with the iodine debacle, I hope that going forward, my health will stabilize, at least to some degree. So keep me in your prayers for that. Nevertheless, I want to say this, that I do not have any major diseases. I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. My cardiovascular health is fine. I don't have high cholesterol. I'm not obese. I'm relatively flexible. I have decent strength and muscle mass. My inflammation markers are all good, like CRP, homocysteine, ferritin, all this stuff is in very low optimal ranges. My blood pressure is 110/70. My HDL is around 60. My triglycerides is around 50. My body fat is around 17%. Hopefully we can get that down to 15 over the coming months. My testosterone is about 700 to 800 for total and about 90s for the free testosterone. I have friends that are low testosterone and going on TRT therapy that are my age or around my age. My brain is sharp. My oral health is relatively good. I've had no cavities in the last 5+ years since doing all these different health hacks that I'm writing about and I'll share with you today. I have had no need for cleanings. My teeth are pretty fine and clean. I have energy to do what I need most of the time, and I live a relatively active life despite all of these problems. Every time I go to the doctor and check in and I have to fill out the new patient paperwork, it says, do you have this? Do you have obesity? Do you have this? Whatever else. I'm like, nope. I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And as crummy as I feel that day because I didn't get good sleep, as exhausted as I feel, as pissed off as I feel, it's always a chance like, oh, okay, God is actually giving me really good health. Even though I've had my struggles and my annoyances, at the end of the day, I don't really have any major problems, which is amazing considering all the crap that I've been through, to be honest with you. But again, God's grace works through us in our life through action, motivation, knowledge, resources, all the supplements that I took, all the knowledge that I took, all of that, God gave that to me so that I would be able to balance out the things that I had to experience, like the loss of sleep, the stress, and everything else that would have been really bad, probably would have resulted in diabetes or, other problems, low testosterone, which leads to other problems. If I didn't take care of myself, if I didn't have the knowledge, if I wasn't as obsessed with my health, do you get it? So even though I was, from my perspective, being a little synergist, God used my synergism monergistically for His good, which is truly profound. But nevertheless, I've dealt with many things, and I'm very grateful to God for giving me all of these tools so that I could be healthy. And otherwise, it would have been much worse, and that's guaranteed. So hopefully I can share that with you. I can impart some of that with you and help you tweak or start from scratch and really totally revamp your health life. Whatever it happens to be with you, that's my goal with this series. And so now that we're done with me, it's time to talk about the different topics. It's time to get healthy like a fox. Our first stop is supplementation.
Healthy